He was young, black, and brilliant, but all the police saw was a threat. Labeled a thug by the media, shackled like a criminal in court, and humiliated in front of the city, it looked like the system would crush him until he stood up in that courtroom and delivered the very same speech that earned him a standing ovation at Harvard. This is a powerful, true-to-life story of Jamal Carter, a young man from the streets of Atlanta who fought racism, stereotypes, and systemic bias with nothing but truth, dignity, and the power of his words. What happened in that courtroom stunned the nation and changed lives. Watch to the end for the shocking twist that left the judge speechless. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe for more real stories that expose truth and injustice. It was supposed to be a regular Friday. Jamal Carter, 24 years old, freshly returned from Cambridge, Massachusetts, had flown home to Atlanta to surprise his mother for her 50th birthday. His duffel bag carried two things: his worn-out hoodie from high school and a pristine copy of his Harvard Law Review speech, the one he had been asked to deliver just a week ago. That speech had earned him praise from professors, attorneys, and senators. That same speech would later change the course of his life. But none of that mattered to the two officers outside Southview Mall. He had just exited a coffee shop, sipping a latte and scrolling through his phone, when the cruiser screeched to a halt beside him. "Hey, hands out your pockets," one officer barked. Jamal turned, confused. "Excuse me?" You matched the description. Black male, dark hoodie, gray jeans. "That's half the city," Jamal muttered, still unsure what was happening. The other officer had already begun approaching, hand on his holster. Jamal, ever calm, ever diplomatic, raised his hands. "I'm just heading home. I can show you ID." He didn't get to finish. He was slammed against a cruiser, handcuffed roughly, and pushed into back seat. His coffee spilled onto the pavement. His phone cracked under an officer's boot. His voice was never raised. Not once. Jamal had learned about systemic injustice from books. He'd studied the disproportionate incarceration of black men in law school, but nothing could prepare him for living it. At the precinct, the officer filling out the report didn't even look up. Name: Jamal Carter. Gang affiliation? "What?" he gasped. "You look the type." He didn't reply. Silence was safer. Mugshots. Fingerprints. A holding cell with graffiti that read, "Justice is a joke." His charges? Suspicion of theft. The store clerk from a nearby boutique reported someone suspicious browsing too long, without buying anything. That was it. Jamal's public defender arrived late the next day. She scanned the charges, unimpressed. "This is thin," she said. "You'll be out soon." But the local media had already picked it up. "Harvard man turned hoodlum," one headline read. Another called him a thug in Ivy League clothing. Social media exploded. Old classmates defended him. Strangers condemned him. Nobody knew the full story. In the courtroom's waiting area, Jamal sat beside his mother, Loretta. She was a retired schoolteacher with soft eyes and a spine of steel. But today, her hands trembled. "I told you, Ma, I didn't do nothing," he whispered. "I know," she replied, "but I also know the world we live in." She'd raised Jamal alone, in a neighborhood where bullets outnumbered books. But she believed in his brilliance. She clipped every article when he made the dean's list, saved every award. She even kept his acceptance letter to Harvard in a plastic folder. When the bailiff called his name, she kissed his forehead. "Let them hear the truth, baby." Courtroom 4B was packed. On the prosecution side, the store clerk who thought he looked sketchy. The same man who couldn't describe what was supposedly stolen. There was no footage, no missing merchandise, no real evidence, just Jamal's skin and presence. The prosecutor painted Jamal as a clever manipulator. He referenced the hoodie, the neighborhood he was found in, and the pattern of behavior seen in educated criminals who believe they're above the law. The defense lawyer was decent, but she was outmatched. And when the judge, a stern middle-aged man named Gerald Wexler, asked if Jamal had anything to say before the final ruling, the room braced for a few weak words. But Jamal stood up, tall, calm, clear. "I do, Your Honor." He reached into his folded jacket. From the inner pocket, He pulled a single page. "I'd like to read something I gave at Harvard last week," he said. "They didn't call me a thug there. They called me a leader." The courtroom went silent. He unfolded the speech and began. "I stand here today not just as a black man who beat the odds, but as a reminder that our presence in rooms we were never meant to enter is not a threat. It's a testimony. I've walked hallways where the walls whispered doubt, where looks were louder than words, where hands reached for security buttons before they offered a handshake. And still I rise, because we are not our stereotypes. We are not their statistics. That we are scholars. We are thinkers. We are the future. And no system, no prejudice, no misjudgment will change that truth." When he finished, the silence in the room was deafening. Even the judge looked shaken. Jamal folded the paper, tucked it back in his jacket, and said, "That's who I am. Not what the media says. Not what the officer saw. That." The judge took a deep breath. "All charges are dropped," he finally said. "Mr. Carter, I apologize on behalf of this courtroom." Jamal's knees nearly gave out. His mother burst into quiet sobs. The clerk stammered out an apology. Too little, too late. Outside the courtroom, cameras awaited. But this time, the headlines read, Asterisk, scholar silenced by system speaks back. Asterisk, Harvard grad cleared of all charges. Asterisk, justice, finally. Jamal Carter now tours the country, speaking at schools, law firms, and police academies about bias, reform, and the power of speech. He's not just a name in a case file. He's a movement. They called him a thug until they heard his truth. 3 months after the courtroom erupted in applause and Jamal's name was cleared, he stood behind a different podium, this time at Morehouse College, his alma mater, the same campus where he'd once studied criminal justice and read about systemic racism. He now addressed as a guest lecturer. The audience was filled with students who looked like him, black, brilliant, and burdened. He didn't speak from notes. He didn't need to. "I'm not here because I beat the system. I'm here because the system tried to bury me and failed." His voice carried not just truth, but pain and power. We keep telling young black boys to pull up their pants, but maybe it's time we pull up this justice system. Because I was almost erased over a hoodie and coffee. The crowd rose in applause. Among them was Professor Angela Dupree, a fiery civil rights scholar, who approached him afterward with an idea. "Jamal, what if you didn't just speak about change? What if you made it from inside the courtroom?" By the following year, Jamal had passed the Georgia bar. He became one of the youngest public defenders in Fulton County, taking on the very cases that mirrored his own. Young black teens, profiled and cuffed, now had someone who truly understood. Jamal didn't just fight cases. He fought the narratives. He banned the word thug from his courtroom vocabulary. He challenged every racial bias during jury selections. He taught his clients to speak their truth, just like he did. But change didn't come easy. He clashed with judges. He faced police unions. Death threats arrived in anonymous envelopes. But he stayed steady. "If they couldn't break me in handcuffs," he once said to a fellow attorney, "they damn sure won't break me in a suit." Then came the Avery case. 17-year-old Avery Jones, straight-A student, captain of the robotics team, full ride to MIT, was arrested after a white neighbor claimed he looked like he was casing the house. He was simply walking home with his backpack and AirPods. The charges? Trespassing and resisting arrest. The injuries? A fractured wrist and bruised ribs. The prosecution spun its tired tale. Avery should have complied, they said. They painted his silence as guilt, his hoodie as a weapon. Jamal saw himself all over again. In court, the prosecutor smirked. "Mr. Carter, you made quite a name for yourself in these racial injustice crusades. Are we in for another speech?" The courtroom chuckled, but Jamal's voice cut through like a blade. "No, this time I brought evidence." He had obtained the officer's body cam footage, unreleased to the public, showing Avery being tackled from behind without provocation. He also brought Avery's college essays, read aloud for the court. And finally, Jamal pulled a card from his jacket, Avery's invitation letter to the White House Science Fair signed by the president himself. Jaws dropped. The judge asked for silence 3 times. When the verdict came, not guilty on all counts, the courtroom erupted in tears. Jamal didn't stop there. He founded the Courtroom to Classroom Project, bringing real legal education to inner-city schools. He helped pass a bias disclosure bill, requiring police to disclose all use-of-force footage in any civilian complaint. And on the second anniversary of his wrongful arrest, he returned to the same police station, not with rage, but with reform proposals. Some officers listened. Some mocked him. But one rookie whispered as he walked past, "Your story got me through the academy. I'm trying to be different." That was enough. Years later, Jamal stood at Harvard again, this time as a guest commencement speaker. He wore a crisp black suit, no longer the young man accused, but the man remembered for what he overcame. He looked out over a sea of graduates and began. "They call me a thug. Before they knew my name, before they knew my dreams, before they heard my voice. But now they call me advocate, now they call me counselor, now they call me change." Tears streamed. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. And in the front row, Loretta Carter, his mother, now cancer-free, smiled the biggest smile the campus had ever seen. This story isn't just about one man's triumph. It's about how easy it is to reduce someone to stereotype, especially when their skin speaks louder than their resume. It's about the quiet war black men face when walking, shopping, even breathing, battles that most of the world will never see. Jamal Carter's story reminds us, words matter, but truth matters more. And sometimes a single voice, armed with the right message, can shake a courtroom, wake a nation, and rewrite a system.